Technically phase 1. I'm gonna call it phase 2 though.
Hey y'all, my name is Nat. I hope you're having a terrific day today. And for this video, we are going to be doing my Star Wars Canon project. Alright, before we get into anything bookish, make sure to hit like and subscribe down below, as well as tell me in the comments who is your favorite character from the prequels, because I am finally entering that phase of this universe, of this expanded universe, and I am so excited. So yes, there's been about 100-year jump from the last book I read in the prior Canon project and this one, because that one is still in the High Republic phase. But now these are going to be covering events that take place shortly before the Phantom Menace. These books are mostly going to be focusing on the characters that we're going to be seeing in the Phantom Menace and some of the films, which I'm so excited for. However, I am also a little nervous because obviously we have a lot of content with these characters already. So they have distinct personalities and voices, and I am a little apprehensive to see if these authors can stick true to those voices and don't make these characters I've grown to love feel out of character. Right from the start, example A, Padawan by Kiersten White. This is a young adult novel which is following Obi-Wan when he is Padawan and is really starting to kind of struggle with his identity as a Padawan, since he and Qui-Gon have quite different personalities. And that's really been exacerbated since Qui-Gon's own master, Dooku, decided to leave the Order, and now Qui-Gon is kind of struggling a little bit himself, and so that's not leaving a lot of room for Obi-Wan, who he's supposed to be training. However, Obi ends up finally convincing Qui-Gon that they need to go on this one specific mission, and when Qui-Gon doesn't show up, Obi decides to take it upon himself and do it without him, which is a choice, buddy, because he ends up meeting a group of other teenagers who are also sensitive to the Force. This one does seem like it's going to be more of a young adult novel focusing on Obi kind of establishing his own identity, but honestly, I love that. Obi is absolutely one of my favorite characters, and so of course I'm here for more of him and more expansion on his character. I'm so excited. Like I said, I'm just really hopeful that White does his voice justice, and I'm also really hopeful that the audiobook narrator can do, you know, a passing similarity to Ewan McGregor. The next book also follows these two characters, as it is Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray. From the synopsis, it seems as though we're kind of following a similar discussion around the characters, except in this one, we're also going to be seeing more of Qui-Gon, who again is struggling in his role as a master, especially since Dooku ended up leaving the Order. And it looks as though in this one, we're really focusing on these two trying to understand each other. They have very different personalities. They have very different styles when it comes to working with the Council, when it comes to working with other Jedi. And it seems, especially since Obi is getting older and has established his identity more, he's starting to butt heads with Qui-Gon a lot more as well. But what's really interesting is that in this one, we also get to see another of Dooku's prior Padawans, Rael Averross, who ends up requesting help from the Council. Things get really complicated though when Qui-Gon actually ends up having a Force vision, and he is determined to not let this happen, but everybody around him isn't really sure if they believe this vision is, you know, actually what it seems. Again, about the voice, again about the narration work, I am very hopeful that the audiobook narrator will sound like both Ewan McGregor and Liam Neeson, because, you know, listening to an entire book with those two voices sounds like a great time to me. And then finally is one I'm very excited for is The Living Force by John Jackson Miller, because this one is going to be following the entire Jedi Council. And I mean, we don't see that much of them. We don't really get to expand on any of their characters in the films. So I'm really interested to see more about this different group of interesting aliens. I did get more time with some of them in like Clone Wars. Particularly, I do see Plo on the cover. He's a bro, and I can't wait to see more of him. But also Yaddle and Windu and the many others that I don't know their names of. So it looks like a Jedi outpost is being debated on whether or not it should be decommissioned. And Qui-Gon ends up sort of challenging the Council that they need to become more involved in actually trying to help the people of the galaxy and see what decommissioning this outpost will really do and how it will affect the planet and the surrounding ones as well. So all 12 of them end up making a trip to kind of put on this giant ceremony, but at the same time, the gangs and pirates that have started to take up residence in this area are going through their own power struggle, and unfortunately people are getting caught in the crossfires. Of course, the Jedi Masters are not going to let that happen. Very excited to see more of these characters, to see the dynamics between them, and actually watch them do something, you know, more Jedi-like than just hanging out in the council and making decisions. So on that note, I will officially talk to y'all again when I have started into Padawan.
Hello my friends, I'm gonna be honest, I don't particularly want to be filming this right now because I'm sick and I feel like crap. But I've hit the halfway point into 2 books. I need to do my updates. Otherwise, I have to start another book and I just don't want to do that. So I've actually surpassed the halfway point into Padawan. And thus far, I do feel like White is doing a relatively good job of giving us a young Obi-Wan's voice. Little bits of his character do feel very true to the Obi-Wan that's been developed for me in the TV shows and the movies. I do feel like there's a little bit there of his questioning his identity as a Jedi and whether or not this is actually what he wants to be doing. And of course, seeing as how that's an aspect of these sorts of Star Wars stories I love, I'm all over that. This does definitely feel like it is very much a character-focused Star Wars book. It's not really surprising to me, just based on the title and the cover and everything I knew about this. All of this started because Count Dooku came to visit the Jedi Council, and by this point he has left the council, which is obviously like hot gossip around all of the Padawans. Unfortunately for Obi, he is starting to question whether or not Qui-Gon is going to make the decision to leave the Order as well. Is he actually meant to stay a Jedi? Like, is this what his calling actually is? Or is the Force leading him to do something different? So he ends up kind of leaving by himself. He ends up landing on this planet that is very connected to the Force. He can feel it just from being there. And he meets this odd group of teenagers at the oldest and some kids who are self-sustaining through this planet, but everything on the planet, it seems, is trying to kill them. Obi is trying to help them, but also realizes that they have some sort of ability reminiscent to a Force user, but that's not quite what it is. And he's trying to figure out what that is, how it works for them, how are they getting this, and also how to help them. I do like that along with Obi struggling in his own identity, we're seeing it mirrored in questions he's asking these kids, them having to question their own identities and the society they've been brought up in, because this is the only life they know. This is the life they've been taught to live. Anything else to them is wrong. I do think White is doing a really good job of kind of reinforcing those same themes of self-reflection in both like the main character and also the plot itself. I'm really liking this, honestly. It's very bingeable. Again, I like Obi. I think it's interesting to see him interact with some of the other characters just because he's never really had an experience like this where he's been forced to question his identity as a Jedi, and now that he is, it's giving him all this emotional turmoil. Yeah, so I'm really liking it. I want to film this update so that I can keep reading it, honestly, because it's going very well. Hey guys, so I have finished out Padawan and I really liked this. Honestly, this felt like an episode of Clone Wars, and I love that about it. Did it come across sometimes as very clearly YA? Yes, but at the same time, Obi-Wan is like 16, so that makes perfect sense. The issues he is dealing with throughout the book definitely feel like that of a teenager, just, you know, in a Star Wars world. It is very much a character study around Obi-Wan. The events of the plot are very episodic. I don't think like what happens here is going to be impacting any other books that I read in the future. I do think it would have been cool if there was some part of the plot here that might evolve into something more in the future, that might have expanded on the lore of the Star Wars universe. There are nods to characters from the High Republic, namely Orla, who I really enjoyed, so of course I was very excited to even get glimpses of her. There was a reference to Elzar and like the hyperspace disaster in technically phase 1. I'm gonna call it phase 2 though. There are so many little nods to things that will happen in Obi-Wan's future that I ate up. I do think White kept the voice of Obi-Wan pretty true to the original. There was a lot of him questioning his identity as a Padawan, a desire to continue on in his quest to become a Jedi, his relationship with the Force. There's even a little bit of like him questioning his sexuality, which was unexpected, but I actually really appreciated it because it's done in a way of like the Padawan are taught don't have attachments, and so this has just been a very obvious thing to him for so long. But now that he finally has the opportunity to sort of question it, he's wondering like, is he actually attracted to boys, to girls, to no one? And I don't know, it just felt so small and insignificant in the grand scheme of like everything Obi's having to deal with. It was really impactful for him as well. I really liked how it was handled. Again, this is very clearly a YA book. I mean, I would have loved if it had some higher stakes, if there was a little bit more depth in the character work, but I also just really enjoyed it for what it was. This was a really strong 4-star. I think I might even say 4.5. I definitely recommend this one, especially for younger readers interested in the Star Wars universe. If you love Clone Wars, like I said, this reads like an episode of Clone Wars. Hey y'all, so I've hit the halfway point into Master and Apprentice. I'm loving this, but I also don't really have a lot to say because majority of my feelings about this book can be summed up in the relationship between Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. We're literally just focusing on how their relationship shifted when Qui-Gon was offered a role on the council. I do also love seeing more of Qui-Gon's background, his relationship with Dooku. We get little flashbacks to when he was a Padawan and kind of seeing how even then those two as Master and Apprentice were quite different. And we also get to see even like the differences in how Dooku was a master to his different Padawans. And even though these two men had the same teacher, they still are so different in how they work as a Jedi and how they handle the council and how they live their lives and their relationship to the Force. It's just, oh, this is the sort of stuff that I love in the Star Wars universe. I also love the push and pull we have with Obi-Wan. I mean, he's a teenager, really respects Qui-Gon and wants him to be his master, but he's also like so hurt by the possibility that Qui-Gon is going to give up this role in order to be on the council. But it's like he also is proud of his master for being up to be on the council. The plot itself is I'll be honest, I don't really feel like what's going on in the story is really prevalent to anything on the higher level in this universe. I don't see it tying into like another book. It's kind of like a political mystery, basically. I do like how the plot is raising questions around Rael's character. He has been basically working on this planet as I wouldn't really say ruler, but an advisor for this princess who's currently too young to rule, and she is like just about to be sworn in. And so Rael as a Jedi is very different to the sort of Jedi Qui-Gon is used to interacting with, Obi-Wan is used to interacting with. And it's clear Gray is sort of drawing little lines between Rael and Dooku, because by this point Dooku has left the Order. And though Rael hasn't officially, he just doesn't really act like your average Jedi anymore because he's been so separated from that life for so long now. Like I said, yeah, the character work in this is what I'm loving. That is definitely the driving force of this book. Plot, I don't really care about, but there's enough there for the character work to continue building and causing these situations to happen for certain interactions and growth of certain dynamics, and just I'm loving it. I'm loving it. I really am. It's so good. Hey y'all, so I have officially finished out Master and Apprentice. I actually finished it out a little while ago and I've just put off filming this update. I did really enjoy this. I do think the title and the cover perfectly sell you on what this book is, because this novel is really just about the characters of Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and kind of expanding upon both of them, as well as seeing their relationship as Master and Apprentice. And I ate every second of it up. Like I said before, we do get to see a little bit of Rael, who was Count Dooku's prior Padawan. And it was very interesting to see kind of how both of them learned things from Dooku and the different directions they as people went with those learnings. And then by extension, you can kind of see how Qui-Gon took those learnings and they influenced how he is teaching Obi. I really enjoyed seeing those strings throughout the story, just the connections that those wove between all three of the big characters that we're seeing here. I would have found it a lot more interesting if we did get to see a little bit of Dooku, but he wouldn't really have made sense in the plot that was going on here. Which I will say, the plot in this one it's very fine. I think it works for the focus of the story to be on these characters, and I do think it also works in order to kind of expand on Rael and, like I said, the juxtaposition between he and Qui-Gon, also like the different relationships they have with being a Jedi, with the Jedi Council. I wasn't super invested in like this political mystery that was taking place. I do think Gray ended up kind of having a clever twist on things, and then even from that twist, like the way they ended up developing the climax was actually interesting. And I mean, I liked watching it play out. The driving force of this book was Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, and I loved it for that. I think anybody who enjoys Star Wars and wants to see more on these two characters and the relationship as master and apprentice will love it. I honestly had a really hard time rating this anything lower than 4.5 stars. Like, I kind of was thinking of going a little bit lower just because the plot was so whatevs. It was so good for what I went into it wanting. Like I said, I really put off filming that prior update because I also have hit the halfway point into the Living Force. And I was excited for this one mostly because we were going to be seeing a lot more of the Council. Thus far, I am enjoying this book for that. I love seeing more of Yoda and Yaddle and Plo, Mace. Actually, my losing the train of thought with that is kind of a perfect turning point, because my issue with this book is there is so many characters we're following. I get it, again, that I do enjoy we're following everybody on the Council, but that's like 12 people. That's a lot in its own right. And then we have side characters we see from too. We have a villainous character who we're seeing from. We have a sort of neutral character who is both like trying to help a Jedi, but also technically works for the villain. There's so many perspectives. And I feel like I have been getting better about handling a lot more perspectives in this Star Wars canon project because they tend to have a really big cast. But this one's, it's challenging me. Apart from the ones I named, because those are all ones that I went into this book already knowing slightly, I think the one I've grown to care about the most is Depa. I really like the storyline we're seeing from her. I also enjoy the fact that the author is kind of working on little bits of Mace Windu's personality into Depa's personality, which makes sense seeing as how he was her master, and I thought that was really clever. Oh, we also see more of Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. That's actually how the book opens up, is those two going on a mission, and then Qui-Gon kind of chastising the Council for the lack of care they've really had in certain places, and how they're getting too wrapped up in like, not the politics necessarily, but at the same time kind of the politics, and how they're sort of losing touch with the people of the Republic, and also the people who aren't part of the Republic but also need their help. They decide to go to this one small planet that has been suffering as of late, see, you know, how their not being there really is impacting this area, and how disconnected these people have become from the Jedi, so they don't really understand them anymore. A lot of the Council at this point are out on their own. They're not really interacting with one another, which I do think is a little bit of a shame, because one pair we are seeing is, I want to say his name is 𝗖cie, and he is working with Plo. The dynamic between them has been very fun because neither of them are big talkers, so their interactions have been really entertaining because obviously there's this thing that connects them, but they are so different. And I wish we were seeing more of that. Really, it's like there's the main plot line revolving around Depa and the villainous aspects, plus like the Council trying to help this planet and deciding on this waypoint. But they feel super separate, even though I understand how they're connected. And I think if we cut down on, maybe not even the number of perspectives, but if we cut down on the number of side tasks that are taking place, so we had multiple Jedi working together, and that would kind of cut down those little side stories that might only last a chapter, but even so, it would just allow more focus in the book, in the narrative, and I think I would be enjoying it a bit more. I'm not disliking this, it's just, I'm halfway in, and it feels like I have already read a full novel. So much has happened because we have so many perspectives. There's so many side stories. There's so much going on. And I do understand it's Star Wars. It's a space opera. That's kind of like the focus of a space opera, but just pull it back just a little bit. Hello, my friends. So I have officially finished out The Living Force, and I actually did really like this book, but the number of times I realized, oh my god, I have so much left, was ridiculous. The pacing of this book dragged so much, and again, I really just think all of the qualms I have with the writing of the story come down to the fact that there is such a large cast and there are so many like mini side plots you're following. Even though I did love getting to know more of the council, I do have some new favorites. Specifically, I would say Yariel, I think. Depa, definitely, and then also Peel, Evan Peel, I did like him a lot. But again, I kind of wish we had like a pair of Jedi, so that would have cut it down to 6 at the very start. And then I think some of the like little side plots should have been kind of reworked so that they more incorporated with the main storyline that was going on, where these pirates are having a power struggle, and in particular one is really against the Jedi, because I did get really invested into that main plot aspect, and I actually really liked how things wrapped up with it when it came to kind of reinforcing the whole message around the council and how they really do need to be the boots on the ground again and be more involved in trying to help people, not just so separated out making decisions and sending other people to do their jobs. So I did actually really like this book, but I think I could have liked it more if some of these aspects of the writing style had been fixed. Even after the climax, I like once again looked down being like, oh, I am surely nearly done with this book. And there was another hour in the audio. I was also curious about the appearance of one character who he seemed really familiar. Then I ended up doing a little bit of research on Wikipedia, and it turned out he is somebody from the original trilogy, so that was cool. And then at the very end, we get a little bit of the Sith, like just a tiny smidge. You don't actually even get the name of one of them, but like literally saying their species is enough kind of thing. And so off of that, it did get me thinking whether or not like they are planning to come out with another book that will take place prior to The Phantom Menace. Honestly, I don't even really know if it's needed, because the events of this like so easily roll into Phantom Menace. And on that note, I will be doing a rewatch of that movie here soon. This came out to about 4 stars. Like I said, I did like it. I didn't want to rate it like super negatively, even though I keep complaining about the cast. I did enjoy the story, and I enjoyed the overall message that was going on here. Again, I really liked seeing more around some of these characters, and I'm excited to continue in this like timeline right now. It just was really glaringly obvious to me that something was wrong when I still felt like this was a slog to get through, even though I was very invested in the story. And on that note, like I said, the next piece of media is Phantom Menace. So that is it for this vlog, but I will be back with y'all again next year with another Star Wars canon project. And so on that note, thank you so much for coming to my channel today, y'all. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, leave me the little alien emoji in the comments. I have all my socials as well as a few ways you can support me linked in the description. I come out with videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you, bye!